The First World War, known as the Great War, erupted in 1914, reshaping the world in ways that are still felt today. This global conflict involved over 30 countries and led to the deaths of more than 16 million people. The war spanned continents, from the muddy trenches of Western Europe to the deserts of the Middle East. Join us as we delve into the origins, battles, and lasting impact of the First World War. To understand how the world plunged into such devastating conflict, we must first explore the political and social climate of early 20th century Europe. At this time, Europe was a patchwork of powerful empires and budding nation-states, each vying for dominance. The major powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, France, and Great Britain, were entangled in a web of alliances and rivalries. This complex geopolitical landscape set the stage for a conflict that would change the world forever. Several factors contributed to the outbreak of the First World War, long before the first shot was fired. Militarism was rampant, with nations building up vast armies and navies in an arms race that created a climate of fear and suspicion. The alliance system divided Europe into competing blocs, with the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy pitted against the Triple Entente of France, Russia, and Great Britain. Imperial ambitions led to conflicts over colonies in Africa and Asia, while nationalism stirred passions and fueled desires for independence and expansion. The immediate spark came on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist. This event set off a chain reaction. Austria-Hungary, with the backing of Germany, issued an ultimatum to Serbia. When Serbia's response failed to satisfy Austria-Hungary, war was declared. Russia mobilized to support Serbia, leading Germany to declare war on Russia. France, bound by treaty, was drawn in against Germany and Austria-Hungary. And when German forces violated Belgium's neutrality, Britain entered the war. The dominoes had fallen, and Europe was engulfed in conflict. In the summer of 1914, the world watched as Europe descended into war. The declarations of war came swiftly and decisively. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28. Within days, Germany declared war on Russia and France, and Britain declared war on Germany. The complex web of alliances meant that a conflict that began in the Balkans quickly spread across the continent and beyond. The early battles of the war were marked by rapid movement and fierce fighting. The German strategy, known as the Schlieffen Plan, aimed to quickly defeat France by sweeping through Belgium and then turning east to confront Russia. However, the German advance was halted at the Battle of the Marne in September 1914. The Allies, including French and British forces, managed to stop the Germans just short of Paris. This failure led to the establishment of trench warfare, as both sides dug in for a prolonged and grueling conflict. Trench warfare became synonymous with the First World War. Soldiers lived and fought in a labyrinth of trenches that stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border. Life in the trenches was a nightmare. Soldiers faced constant threats from artillery shells, sniper fire, and poison gas. The trenches were filled with mud, rats, and disease, making everyday existence a battle for survival. A typical day in the trenches began before dawn with the stand-to, a period of heightened alertness in case of an enemy attack. Throughout the day, soldiers repaired trenches, fetched supplies, and stood guard. The nights were often filled with the sounds of distant artillery and the fear of night raids. Despite the horrors, camaraderie developed among the men, forged in the shared hardship and danger. The First World War saw the introduction of new technologies that changed the nature of warfare. Tanks, first used by the British in 1916, rumbled across no man's land, breaking through enemy defenses. Airplanes conducted reconnaissance missions and engaged in dogfights over the trenches. Chemical weapons, such as chlorine and mustard gas, brought new levels of horror, causing agonizing injuries and deaths. These advancements made the war more deadly and unpredictable. The Western Front was the epicenter of the war's brutality. The Battle of Verdun, fought from February to December 1916, was one of the longest and costliest battles in history. French forces, under the command of General Philippe Pétain, defended Verdun against a massive German offensive. The battle became a symbol of French determination and resilience, but at a staggering cost of over 700,000 casualties. The Battle of the Somme, launched by the British and French in July 1916, was intended to relieve pressure on Verdun. The first day of the Somme saw the heaviest losses in British military history, with 57,000 casualties. Over the next 5 months, the battle turned into a grinding war of attrition, with over 1 million men killed or wounded. The Somme epitomized the futility and horror of trench warfare. While the Western Front dominated headlines, the Eastern Front was equally brutal. In 1914, German and Austro-Hungarian forces clashed with the Russian Empire in battles such as Tannenberg, where the Germans inflicted a crushing defeat on the Russians. The Eastern Front saw vast movements of troops and significant casualties, contributing to the eventual collapse of the Russian Empire. Further south, the Gallipoli Campaign of 1915 was a bold but disastrous attempt by the Allies to open a new front against the Ottoman Empire. British, Australian, and New Zealand forces landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula, hoping to secure a route to Russia. The campaign turned into a deadly stalemate, with heavy losses and eventual evacuation by the Allies. The war's impact extended far beyond the battlefield. On the home front, nations mobilized their entire societies for war. Women took on new roles, working in factories, nursing the wounded, and keeping economies running. Propaganda campaigns encouraged civilians to support the war effort through rationing, buying war bonds, and maintaining morale. The war changed social norms and laid the groundwork for future social movements, including women's suffrage. The First World War was truly global. Colonial troops from Africa, Asia, and the Pacific fought alongside European soldiers. Indian soldiers served in the trenches of the Western Front, while African troops fought in East Africa. The war also reached the Middle East, where British forces, including T. Lawrence, fought alongside Arab rebels against the Ottoman Empire. These global contributions highlighted the interconnectedness of the world and the far-reaching impact of the conflict. Several key events turned the tide of the war. In 1917, the United States entered the conflict, providing fresh troops and resources to the weary Allies. The arrival of American forces boosted morale and tipped the balance in favor of the Allies. Meanwhile, the Russian Revolution led to Russia's withdrawal from the war, allowing Germany to concentrate its forces on the Western Front. Despite these shifts, the war continued to exact a heavy toll on all involved. On November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent. The armistice marked the end of fighting, but the war's legacy was far from over. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, military restrictions, and reparations payments. These terms created deep resentment and economic hardship in Germany, setting the stage for future conflict. The war also led to the collapse of empires, including the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires, and the creation of new nations in Europe and the Middle East. The immediate aftermath of the war was devastating. Millions of soldiers and civilians were dead. Economies were shattered, and entire cities lay in ruins. The war had fundamentally altered the political landscape, leading to the collapse of empires and the rise of new nations. The Spanish flu pandemic, which spread rapidly in the war's aftermath, claimed millions more lives, compounding the tragedy. The First World War's legacy is profound. It paved the way for the rise of totalitarian regimes in Germany, Italy, and the Soviet Union. The harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles fueled resentment and economic hardship in Germany, setting the stage for World War II. The war also sparked significant social changes, including advancements in women's rights and the beginning of decolonization as colonial subjects who fought in the war began to demand more rights and independence. The cultural impact of the First World War was immense. The disillusionment and trauma experienced by soldiers and civilians alike were reflected in literature, art, and film. Works like Eric Maria Remarque's All Quiet on the Western Front and the poetry of Wilfred Owen captured the grim realities of the war. The Lost Generation, a term coined to describe those who came of age during the war, expressed their disenchantment through various forms of art and literature, reshaping cultural norms and values. The war also drove significant technological and medical advancements. The need to treat vast numbers of wounded soldiers led to innovations in medical care, including advances in surgery, the use of antiseptics, and the development of blood transfusion techniques. Technological innovations, such as the widespread use of radio and improvements in aircraft, also had lasting effects on civilian life. The First World War was a cataclysmic event that reshaped the world in profound ways. It was a conflict that exposed the horrors of modern warfare and the depths of human suffering, but it also led to significant social and technological changes. As we reflect on the Great War, we remember the millions who lost their lives and the enduring impact it had on the course of history. The lessons learned from this devastating conflict continue to resonate, reminding us of the importance of peace, diplomacy, and the human cost of war. The legacy of the First World War lives on in the monuments and memorials that stand as a testament to the sacrifices made by so many. As we look back on this pivotal moment in history, we honor the bravery and resilience of those who endured the unimaginable and strive to ensure that such a conflict never happens again. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the First World War.